Test, test. Test, test. Okay, cool. Did you have a question about
Okay,
it?
so what we can do here, if you get your phone, we can.
Okay, cool.
Pretty well
We
yourself.
can go in here and I can search here. I wish I brought my thing. It's like, if you have it up here, I can find it somewhere.
You want me to send it again?
No way, it's here somewhere.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Pretty good.
VA draft, here we go. Okay. I'll read it on my little screen.
Okay.
Are you going to share?
I think we ought to close ranks, guys.
Well, if Karen comes, I don't want to. Hi, David. I'm Andrea
Then
Millett.
she can be on the end. I mean,
Nice to meet
I
you.
don't know.
Catherine's been.
Yes, Catherine's been in touch with me.
Hey,
Hi, Dan Goldblatt.
Do you?
Dave. Nice to meet you.
I'm representing politics.
Great.
So I think Andrea's done a great job with the VA, but if you have any questions.
Cool.
happy to answer those. Hi. Sorry,
Hi, I'm Sally Gresham. Nice to meet you. You're with
I'm representing
Politics and Pros, yes. Great.
Liquor license for a coffee shop.
I know. Well, that's good. We like that. Or at least I like that.
We always separate liquor license and we did 2 years ago. I know because
Okay. Karen's not here, so should we slide over?
Yeah, he needs to come over. 'Cause
I can move over there if that's easiest since I'm in the end.
Okay.
Or,
Well, do we want 3 to be in here?
Oh, Malachi just slid over.
okay.
We were 3,
we want
but
3?
Malachi made 2.
Oh, you made 2? Well,
Two, two, and
have
2.
Mary Beth come over. Just have Mary Beth come over. I mean, because then we're not so spread out.
big open day for discussing what they can do and what they can't.
All right.
7:30 we should. 7:30 we should start.
Mary Beth, I'm going to ask you to move over so we can close ranks. You want to put 3 of us on here? I got plenty of room.
Centered.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we have no gavel or anything, but. We ready?
Okay, wait a minute, agenda.
Okay, good evening. I'm Andrea Molad, and I'd like to call the meeting to order this evening. The first item that I'd like to deal with is I'd like to make a motion to appoint Malachi Nugent as chair pro tem for this evening, so he'll run this evening's meeting.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's approved unanimously, so Malachi, please.
Okay. Are the mics on? These mics only go on to the internet. So if you're having trouble hearing us, just ask us and we'll speak up. We also have
Well, we have, where'd it go?
another mic.
It's over there.
Do we need that, or can we use the wireless mic?
Come on.
Hello?
Do we really need it? Just talk.
Is this working? Is it working? Okay. Everybody hear that? Okay, so the first order of business is we'll approve the agenda. Any changes or additions or deletions from the agenda?
I don't have any.
Okay, I'm going to add to under miscellaneous a financial update. And I'm also going to add a motion to increase the amount of our advertising by Forest Hills connection. So those are two additions to the agenda.
Forest Hill, I mean, to the
To the
donation, to the contribution?
no, our advertising.
Oh, our advertising.
Okay, sorry, I neglected to do introductions, so why don't we start? Pat, why don't you start?
Pat Jakopczyk, from 3F07.
Andrea Molad, 3F05.
Sally Gresham, 3F04.
Maliki Nugent, 3F06.
Mary Beth Ray, 3F3.
Okay, we'll move to commissioner announcements. Pat, you want to start?
I have none.
None for me.
Oh, man, I have a couple. I'll bring everybody up to date on the Park Van Ness construction. Right now, they continue with the concrete operations. As you all can see, they're above ground on certain areas. They continue exterior activities of framing, sheathing, and brickwork. They have begun the interior framing. They continue the interior MEP work, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. They begin the Pepco vault work in the street, and there'll be some street closings, but that will be through Pepco. They usually do that either at night or during the middle of the day. It's usually at night. Demolition associated with Pepco vault work on their site. Recently, there was a traffic control plan. I announced it at the January meeting, but it was not approved at that time. Since then, DDOT, as of 1/30/15, has approved the plan. I have sent this out to all the commissioners. It is basically the same traffic control plan that was approved on 6/23/14. We had a community meeting on 5/29 that went over that traffic control plan. So it's definitely been a ongoing, continuated traffic plan. The main new things to the new plan is there's an overhead protection in the public alley for upcoming above the ground work, because people go into the public alley to get into Park Connecticut. And there are a couple of more signs and barricades reinforcing the northbound parking lane closure from 9:30 to 3:30 for construction truck loading and unloading every weekday. That is the non-rush hour morning and afternoons. There will be 2 Sunday deliveries. They have permits for basically deliveries only on February 22nd, which is this Sunday coming up, and March 1st. If this is only deliveries, there is no work permit, so there should be no workers per se on the site. That's the first announcement. The second announcement is we had received from Pepco a Right Tree, Right Place planning program. This is in partnership with Casey Tree. If you own a house and you would like for Casey Tree to come out and recommend a couple of trees to go in place of trees that have been cut down or are in bad shape, they will do that, and you only pay, they give you recommendations, and you only pay $50 for the trees. As a matter of fact, Maliki says he's done it at his house, and Mary Beth has done it. So it's a great deal. The flyer is out on the table, and it shows you about the lines, which the Urban Forestry Administration is also partnership with this. They are planting the smaller trees under the power lines along the city streets. So this is a combined program. The other announcement I have is the Forest Hills Playground maintenance is an ongoing issue after we have our new renovation, and we have I have been in contact with the DPR people in charge and DGS, and for right now there is one contact that everyone should be calling or talking to. His name is Steve Anderson, and his email is steven.anderson@dc.gov. You can send any work request or anything that you see on the playground, which we're asking constituents to do that. It's important. because not everybody's at the playground, and if things are broken or there's limbs down from damage, this is a great way to get the maintenance done by the city. That's it.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple announcements. The first is that we had some complaints in our area recently about rats. Some people had been seeing rats out on the street, and they were nibbling on the ginkgo berries on Appleton Street. So we put in a service request to have the city come out and check all of the dumpsters behind all of the apartment buildings on that stretch, and also the restaurants, Burger King and Bread First. And everything seems to be okay. They did cite Burger King for some violations having to do with trash that was overflowing and kind of a mess back there, but the apartment buildings seem to be in good shape. So, then in terms of the 5,000 block of Connecticut, things are moving ahead on our plans to get the Clean Team and Great Streets grant program installed for the businesses along this block. That has been included in Councilmember Che's request for the budget for this next year. And so it remains to be seen then if the mayor includes it in her budget. That comes back to the council, but it's been requested. The businesses along that block are now in the process of setting up a business association. There are 21 businesses just on this one block here on the two sides of the business association. There are 21 businesses just on this one block here on the two sides of this one block here, 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 on the two sides of this individual business that applied for it. However, there are other things that they can do as a group for beautification and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then on Tuesday, February 10th, last Tuesday, the Deputy Mayor for Education, the new Deputy Mayor for Education, Jennifer Niles, came to Merch and met with the community, met with parents and school officials and the school improvement team to talk about the modernization program. As many of you know, the modernization program at Merch has been delayed numerous times, and there was a real surprise recently when it turned out that the money that had been budgeted would not be nearly as much as would be needed to actually carry out the modernization. Niles confirmed that the mayor will include in her budget the full $65 million that is expected to be needed for the modernization. Right now, there's only $44 million in the pipeline for this project, and so she has confirmed that Mayor Bowser will include the full 65 needed, which means, assuming that the council confirms that budget and approves that budget, and Councilmember Che has expressed her strong support and thinks that will happen, that means that the current timeline for the modernization will be maintained, which means beginning construction in the summer of 2016. That is a delay from what was originally expected. Everybody was hoping that they would start construction this summer. It will be next summer, but at least if the money is actually there, it can start next summer. So the next phase is to spend the next several months doing the design, the concept and the schematic designs, then up to a year on construction drawings, and then construction begins summer of 2016 and lasts for 18 to 24 months after that. So the good news is that an architect has been hired, R. McGee and Associates, and Mr. McGee is a former Merch parent, and his company, or his firm, designed the Tenley Library up in Tenley Town.
Well, he was a second. He wasn't the main designer.
Oh, okay.
He was the second architect in charge.
So then the challenges that remain for the modernization, three main challenges. One, it's just a very tight site. 35% of the land there is actually owned by the National Park Service. It's federally owned land, which means they cannot build on it, which makes it really hard to expand the school. There's also a real challenge trying to find appropriate swing space, because you're going to have to move 700 kids somewhere. And it's an elementary school. You can't do You can't just put up more trailers on the site again because of the National Park Service problems. And then the last one is historic preservation. There is the thought that this is the last school, elementary school in the district of this particular floor plan. There's some question about this, but the Historic Preservation Board wants to make sure that they don't ruin anything historic about the building. So the next steps are that there will be a SIT meeting, a school improvement team meeting in the next 2 weeks. Sally and I, one or both of us, will go to that. And then there will be an envelope meeting, which is a meeting with the immediate neighbors around the school to discuss the next steps and discuss the process. And then a community meeting will follow shortly after that. And the contact for all of this in the Department of General Services is Kenny Diggs. His phone number is 202-580-9361, and he's at kenneth.diggs@dc.gov. And he has committed to take any and all questions and respond to anybody who has questions about the process. So that's all. Did you want to add to anything? Because Sally was there as well. Did you want to add
No,
to
I
anything?
think you covered. It was a good meeting.
It was a good meeting.
Hopefully, it will proceed. Everybody's much more optimistic at this point.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce you to Van Ness Vision Committee report. There are extra copies on the table just outside the front doors here, and please pick up one on your way out or right now if you like. This report discusses the progress that we've made in the last 2 years since we started the Van Ness Vision Committee. And I'll just call your attention to a couple of things. We have a list of the activities and the work, the short-term and long-term projects of this committee, a list of recommendations to make our Van Ness corridor more beautiful and more vibrant on page 12, a list of the merchants, property owners, and others who we work with, a list of the embassies, some of the important demographic data, and we also have renderings by Street Sense and Travis Price and UDC architecture students to show you some ideas of what could happen at Van Ness. And finally, on page 20, we have an inventory of the square footage that is retail square footage that is on Van Ness. So I would really encourage you to get a copy of the report, pick up an extra one and share it with your neighbors. And if you have friends who are developers or own charming restaurants or other local retail, share it with them and encourage them to consider moving to Van Ness. My second announcement is that the Van Ness Vision Committee met last Friday the 13th at WAMU, and Christina Amoruso with the district's Department of Small and Local Business program made a presentation. We had great attendance, including Ken Culbreth of Fannie Mae and their consultant from Himes, Ryan Hand, who's our Ward 3 planner, Nicole Rentz with Mary Che's office, Turker, who owns Acacia Bistro, Zach Freelis of BS Saul, and Martin Smith, who is the executive director of the Barracks Row, Main Street. The message from Main Street, the reason we talked about Main Street is because that's the direction the Van Ness Vision Committee is going. We hope to achieve Main Street status in the next few months. And the message from the Main Street organization is growth by choice, not by chance. And I think that's a great sort of watchword for what we want. Main Street provides technical assistance, training sessions, problem-solving sessions. They even make grants to merchants. Through public-private partnerships, they aim to revitalize neighborhoods and really create a sense of identity, which is exactly what we hope to do in Van Ness. We're asking Mary Che to put forward a budget authorization in June for a Van Ness Main Street. And in a parallel track, Adam Tobe, who is our ANC chair, and his firm, Aiken Gump, for helping us set up a corporate entity, which will then apply for 501c3 status. And then that organization will apply to become a Main Street. I want to really offer special thanks to Adam for his legal help, to Marlene Berlin, Deepa Mehta, Larry Roush, and Bill Sittig, who have burned the midnight oil on drafting articles of incorporation and bylaws. It is not the most exciting thing in the world, and they have done a great job with that. We will need to pay incorporation fees and insurance, and I will plan to introduce at our March meeting some budget numbers for that, and hopefully the ANC can find some money. It will probably be under $3,000. It's a little complicated. We can't, for example, allocate money toward a musical event or a street festival, because those types of expenditures are banned. But we could fund the article or the incorporation and insurance. So anyway, FYI, you'll hear more about that next month. My third announcement is the Van Ness Vision Committee next meeting will be, again, Friday the 13th, March 13th, and it will be here at 4 o'clock. And Martin Smith, the Executive Director of Garrett's Row, will make a presentation on what works and what doesn't work with Main Street. That's all.
Okay. Now we'll move to announcements, open forum. If anybody from the community has anything they wish to raise that's not already on the agenda, now's the time. Anyone? Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm with the Mayor's Office. My name is Mike Matthews, and I'm the new Ward 3 liaison, and I just wanted to introduce myself.
Wait, you have to come.
Yeah,
So that way you're on.
be sure to get this on the record here.
You
My-
gotta.
Use that mic.
Mike,
This one, right here. Sorry. Well, good deal. We'll try it again. Mike Matthews, once again. I'm from Mayor Bowser's office, and I'm the Ward 3 outreach liaison. And I just wanted to give everybody here quickly my contact information and my number. And the point of tonight was to try to meet the commissioners and say hi to you all, and let you know that I'm here for you. I spent about 3 weeks on the ground. I do not have the ink dried on my cards yet, so I'm not able to hand everybody that out yet. But let me go ahead and just send that your way. It's area code. My phone number is area code 202-341-7706. And my email address is Michael, M-I-C-H-A-E-L, .Matthews with 2 T's, @dc.gov. And once again, that's everything constituent-wise. Anything you want to reach out to the mayor's office about, please feel free to let me know. I believe the city administrator is going to step up here in just a minute to discuss a few things. So, thank you.
Mike,
Yes.
can I just say,
Yeah.
thank you for your call,
Yeah.
and we can talk about this in more detail, but I think I'm going to go out on a ledge and say that I think I'm going to speak for all the ANC commissioners, in our ANC anyway, in saying that we really need a single point of contact in each agency. And in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. When we go through our ANC training, they hand us a list of names and email addresses and phone numbers. But in practice, especially with DDOT, which is 80% of what we deal with, falls under the DDOT umbrella, it is a nightmare. And so I would really urge you, sooner rather than later, to really scrub that list and make sure that you've got a single point of contact for us so that we don't get lost in the red tape.
So thank you very much for that question. And I actually have what we're doing right now, district-wide, and I'm sorry that I'm totally messing up this whole side of things, but we're creating core teams, and we're doing that. I'm doing that here in Ward 3, and what that is agencies that are used most in the community. I'm getting feedback from you all. I'm getting feedback from everybody here, and what that is whether that's DDOT, which obviously it will be DCPS, and it will be one point of contact. I'm going to do my best to solidify that Everybody will know who that is. I will be doing, meetings with them quite often, and we'll definitely go over what needs to be done. And this is going to be a point where I'm kind of a liaison, obviously, between, these agency heads. If you're not able to contact them, feel free to come to me. But I believe you're 100% right with that. We need to have one point of contact. And if you feel like you're, going to 2 or 3 people, I'm the person to make sure we parse it down to 1. And, but we will be, once again, I think what I'm trying to communicate to you right now is that we're going to have a core team of agency folks for this area and for Ward 3 that are really going to do work for us. So
are you the new Michael Callahan?
that is it. So more and more people are calling me that. We took one Michael, and I'm the new Michael, I guess. So yes, ma'am. Any other questions right now?
Well, I'd like to add on to that,
Yeah.
because when we became ANC commissioners, we were given a liaison list, and I know the new
Yeah.
commissioners were given a list, but I'm assuming that list is kind of not up to date because it was pre Ms. Bowser coming in as mayor. So she
One
hadn't,
just went around.
right,
So
Yeah.
we do have it.
one just came around?
Yeah, we do have it, and I'd be happy to get that to you. I usually, and this is actually my fault, I usually have a folder where I could just hand it to you. I've been out here actually in the ward since about 6 o'clock driving and dropping salt and trying to help the city administrator and our team remove the snow. So I'm sorry that I don't have the actual paperwork for you tonight. I can get it to you.
You can email it.
I can email it. That's a better way to do it. But no, we have all that. And I think a lot of these questions, once again, email me. I know you've seen my emails, and most of you have done a good job at getting back. But I will get back to you. That's definitely what we do. And a lot of times it's an easy fix, or it's a fix that's really just a quick, here you go.
And the other question is, do you think you could have a community meeting or a training session for the ANC commissioners with these core heads?
Let me
That
look.
was something that we had asked about from the office of the ANC.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do seminars with BZA, et cetera. This was something that would be really good for us to learn who to go to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is what I will say. Let me go back and check with everybody. First of all, I've got to take the first step and actually get this firmed up. That was make sure we're all on board and we do have the right agencies, and that we've got the right team working for Ward 3 and for this area. So I want to say yes, but I don't want to commit resources that I'm not able to
Well, I know it's hard
promise.
to get all those people together, but
Yeah.
it would be really good.
Well, let's see what we can do, and once again, follow up with me in email. I'll follow up with you and say, hey, let's get working on that. And as you see, it might take a week or a few days to get together, but I will definitely give you the right answer for that. So, everybody, all set? All right, thank you.
Good evening, Ward 3, and thank you, ANC commissioners and folks, for allowing me the opportunity to talk to you for just a second. My name is Rashad Young. I'm the City Administrator for the District of Columbia. I've been here since January the 2nd. I want to talk with you a little bit about what we're doing in terms of the budget and make sure you have some key information in your hands, and hopefully you'll participate in our budget engagement forum. So our focus for the next several months, for February, March, and April, as we call this Fresh Start February, is to talk to the community and the public about our budget process and encourage you all to attend one of 3 budget engagement forums that we are having. The first is on this coming Thursday at 7 p.m., February the 19th at Wilson High School. It begins at 7 p.m. Saturday, February the 21st at Anacostia High School at 1 p.m. And Monday, February 23rd at Dunbar High School at 7 p.m. As the mayor has begun to talk all throughout the community about her priorities, which include education, affordable housing, job creation, and excuse me, investment in infrastructure, we want to engage the community and hear your thoughts about what our priorities are and get your feedback as we develop this budget to send to the City Council. My staff in the budget office have been meeting with agency heads for most of February, getting their input and feedback about what to propose in the budget, and we're waiting for some critical milestones to finalize the budget process. First is at the end of February, this Chief Financial Officer will issue revised revenue estimates, and that really will set the basis for what resources we have available to construct the fiscal year 16 budget. And then for March, for all of March, staff will be working on budget recommendations to the mayor, and she'll make final decisions on her budget in March and propose that to council end of March, the first part of May. Council will, from April through May, conduct oversight hearings, talk to the public, and engage in the budget. And then by June, the council will vote on the budget, send it to the mayor for signature, and once it's signed, it goes to Congress for review. Many of you probably know that we've been talking about a deficit in the current fiscal year of about $80 million. Part of that deficit will be shaped by what the CFO says at the end of February in terms of our revenue estimates, but we're looking at options and recommendations for how we can curtail that deficit for the rest of this fiscal year. And at this point, we're projecting a deficit of about $230 million for fiscal year 16, which also will be shaped by that revenue estimate. And so that's what we're really focused on, is to make sure that we stay in balance for the current fiscal year and have solutions to present a balanced budget for fiscal year 16. So your input is important. There are lots of needs and desires in this city. We cannot do them all, and we would appreciate your feedback and input into that process about what you think is most important from an investment standpoint as we try to put the finishing touches on what will be submitted to the council from the mayor's first budget. And so with that, I encourage you to come to one of the 3 budget engagement forums. Please tell the rest of the citizens in Ward 3 and encourage them to participate as well. And then I'll be happy to take any questions you have for me.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, now we'll move to the next item, which is discussion and resolution to enter into a voluntary agreement with respect to an application by Politics and Pros Coffee to serve alcohol at the establishment.
Yeah, so we have a David Goldblatt is here to represent Politics and Pros this evening. We have a draft of a settlement agreement. I'm told that that's the vocabulary that I've circulated, that I don't have hard copies of, unfortunately, but essentially Politics and Pros is asking for a liquor license to serve liquor during the hours that food is served in the coffee shop, the Modern Times coffee shop downstairs. The details of this voluntary agreement basically specify how many seats and what hours and other concessions that Politics and Pros is going to make to the surrounding community. The application has been filed with ABRA, as far as I understand, and I think what's before us is to approve the voluntary agreement provisions. Do I need to read the whole thing into the record?
What are the hours?
The hours are Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Those are the hours of Modern Times coffee shop, Modern Times Cafe.
No, you don't need to read it into the record. We'll post it on our website.
Okay. As far as I understand, then, can I just make a motion that we approve the voluntary agreement?
Why don't we see if there are any questions?
Are there any questions
First
from anyone?
discussion.
Discussion?
I have a few questions. First, well, would you like to say anything before we start?
No, just if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
All right.
I think we should make a motion first.
All right.
Okay. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the settlement agreement with Politics and Prose Coffee House.
Seconded.
Okay, discussion?
Yep, discussion too. Okay, you said you had some.
Two questions. What type of liquor license have you applied for? Is it beer, wine, and spirits, or just beer, wine?
Just get it on the record. It is solely beer and wine, and it's solely for the coffee shop area. So they can't bring it out into the bookstore. It can only be in the coffee shop.
And then my other question is, you say entertainment shall consist of spoken word and music through acoustic or amplified performance. Do you have music now?
There is currently in the coffee shop now, and what we're trying to do is keep the coffee shop as is, just adding a liquor license. And as part of the liquor license, you have to explain what you're going to be doing. There is currently an open mic night for poetry reading in the coffee shop, so we want to include that. This is not opening it up to become a dance hall or anything else. It is poetry readings.
But that already happened.
That already happens.
Friday nights, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., I
Yes,
think.
ma'am.
Friday nights.
Okay. Those are my only two questions.
I have a question, a couple of questions. What are you thinking? Well, there will be no outside spaces. This is all internal.
Correct.
Right, we need to be sure and make a note that this does not include any exterior
Yes.
Spaces. And then the other is, you said something about, now I can't find it, care for the public space that borders a coffee house, including well-kept suitable plantings if applicable. Are you planning on doing any?
Well, if you recall, about 3 years ago, we did have benches and plants outside the front of Politics
Correct.
and Prose.
Yes.
And, you know, if those could be brought back, we would love to put those back in place.
Were they taken out for what reason?
Currently, there is, you know, like Comet Ping Pong and others have public space permits.
Yes.
We do not have one. So we had to take it away when we got our original APRA license for just the book readings 2.5 years ago. So if we ever get a public space license, we would put those things back in the public space.
Okay, do you plan on doing, that was my question.
That's
Do you
the
plan
question.
on doing that?
Not
fall.
at this point, but we want to be able to provide that service to the ANC and to the community if that's so desired.
I thought it was very nice, but
Yeah.
you need a permit.
Permit for it,
and that's
yes.
why I was asking you the question.
It
plus
is-
out the parking lot. Sometimes there are people out there, and you had some plant material, like in pots.
All those about 2.5 years ago were taken away.
Okay, back
So-
and front.
Back and front.
Okay. All right.
As all part of the original APRA license. Trying to stay above
And
board.
what do you do with the alcohol from at 8 a.m.? Just out of curiosity. Mimosas at 8 a.m.
A nice Bloody Mary
Yeah.
if you want it.
Okay.
But we're only doing beer and wine, so that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's why I asked the question. Okay.
That back parking lot is really getting to be a nightmare. I was back there twice in the last couple of weeks.
Not solely us back there.
Oh, I know. But the point I want to make is after somebody's had a couple of drinks, it's going to be even worse.
I do
So-
recognize that, but I think our clientele is maybe different than some of the other establishments. These are folks coming in to read a book and maybe have a glass of wine. We're not, dealing with loads of drinking or pitchers or anything like that, like maybe some other establishments.
I'm really sort of piggybacking. I don't have a problem with your liquor license at all. In fact, I'd love to come down and have a glass of wine and read a book. But I'm using this just kind of as an opportunity to ask you about the parking lot. Who owns that and who runs it? Is that owned by?
Yeah, I'm actually unclear as to who the ownership of it is. We all have spaces in that area, and Politics and Pros tries to keep our spaces clean of debris and whatnot and make sure that they're turned over.
Well, I mean, another issue is that people are parking up in between those trees on the.
On the
berm
embankment,
In
yeah.
the back. And, I mean, I know it's not good for the trees, and, I don't know, I mean, I would just ask you to take the message back that, you know, we love you guys, but if there's anything you can do to, I don't know, manage that parking lot so it's a little more organized
Right.
and not quite so destructive to the trees, in the back, I think that would be.
I thought we could do something with the Burger King. Can we do something with your parking lot?
It'd be satellite parking for Politics and Pros. Run a shuttle.
No, I mean that we were able to impose some regulations.
And do recognize that, you know, Politics and Pros will be shutting down at the normal hours of 10 p.m., which is the standard hours of Politics and Pros. And there are other venues along that block that stay out, you know, past that time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we know. That have liquor license.
Obviously.
And play music.
So you'll be selling liquor
As a
until
result.
you close, basically, or will you be cutting off before then?
Right. Well, the coffee house will be closing
Okay.
at 10 p.m.
At 10. Okay.
Okay.
Open up for-
Any comments or questions from the community?
Please come to Politics and Pros. Enjoy a book, enjoy a beer.
None, then vote on the motion. All in favor?
Just,
Oh,
okay, so,
Friendly, what did I say to you about you needed to include that?
yeah, so Sally suggested that I add a line, the beer and wine only, I don't know if we need to mention in the settlement agreement, because the ABRA
That's the Apple.
That would be part of the
application is
license
for that.
application.
So I don't know if that needs to be in the VA or settlement agreement or what we're calling it now. But you also wanted to note that the entertainment will only be indoors.
Correct.
And that there won't be any outdoors. So I can add a clause to the agreement to that effect. Would that be okay with you?
anything about managed parking lot?
I mean, you know, if we can add something about, you know, taking additional efforts to ensure that the parking lot is
Properly maintained.
properly managed and maintained, and that steps are taken to protect trees along the berm in the rear.
Well,
I mean, I don't know if this
Trees
is
and landscape.
appropriate for a liquor
The
license,
tree
honestly.
parking-
I don't know that.
The
that
place
it's-
where they park by the trees isn't at the Politics and Pros side of that
It
parking lot. It's
is.
all the
No,
way
no,
up at
no,
the
they're
other
not
side.
designated spots. The only ones that are designated are the dentist spots, but all those other spaces are, if you're going to the paint store or Politics and Pros or
But that,
Best of Pizza.
and I agree with you from a perspective of, you know, just driving up there, you can drive anywhere. From the appearance of the ABRA license and our lease, we only control a certain amount of spaces. So, you know, I don't want to take on responsibility beyond what the ABRA license is. I'm happy to add in that we will take, you know, care and recognize to our patrons that they should not be parking on the embankment by the trees. I think Politics and Pros would be
so
happy
how
to
many
take that on.
spaces do you have that's included?
As it came out of my mouth, and I was like, "She's going to ask that."
Yeah.
I honestly
Well, I
don't
mean, it must
remember.
be divided for the
Yeah, I
different,
just honestly
um,
don't
business
remember.
owners.
But
It's probably 20% or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you a
How
number
many
that's not
businesses
true.
there?
Yeah.
So would you be okay with adding a clause to the effect that the parking lot area behind Politics and Pros, or that you're responsible for, will be properly maintained?
Absolutely.
And would you want them to post a sign, for instance, saying don't park on the berm?
I mean, I kind of feel like this is a discussion for another day. I feel like it doesn't really belong in the liquor license thing, you know, I'm just trying to bootstrap really here.
Yeah.
I don't know about signage. Sure. I mean, I think we can try it. But I think we do need to have a sit down with all the
I
businesses
think the
there.
row needs a sit down
Yeah.
with the ANC to go over this, because
Yeah.
we
kinda
putting
too
up a
much work.
sign doesn't affect the signage that needs for other patrons, because there are clearly some patrons that are going to the paint store or other restaurant facilities that just don't come to Politics and Prose.
Yeah.
Is this something that we could take up with the business association once it's established?
Sure.
Well, that's way down the line.
But
That's not
I
happening.
think it's entirely appropriate to include it in here. This is an agreement with the,
Yeah.
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
community, with the neighborhood in
Yeah.
exchange for this liquor license.
Okay.
So I think if it's something.
Try it. Yeah.
Yeah, those two lines of, keeping the parking lot, our section of the parking lot clear, and a sign about not, parking on the burn, whatever term we want to use for that area. I think Politics and Prose can agree to that.
Isn't that National Park Service land?
I don't know where the line
Well,
is.
see, that's one of our issues. Maybe we need to find that out.
Well, let's go with this. I mean, if
I know
everybody's okay
Manoli
with
was
it, and
talking
then,
about that at one point.
yeah.
That's well beyond our.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
But
kind
can
of a
you,
no
can you
man's
find
land.
out who owns the building? I mean, maybe, Andrea, this is your
Yes. it is.
SMD, right? So if you can communicate and find out who the owner is.
Who owns the parking
Who
lot?
owns the parking lot, and what their
Sure.
boundaries are, what
Yeah.
their boundaries are.
Okay.
My guess is it's from the alley to the buildings, because there's an alley that's like a public alley. So I think people over time have just been parking on the public space land of either DC-owned or National Park Service.
Hasn't the issue also come up about the paving of that alley,
Yes.
the DDOT or something like that? Because that's adds to that mess of the whole parking lot back there, is that horrible part of the, so I could pursue that.
If you might ask Manoli, I think at one point he had an answer for that.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, move the question. All in favor?
I'm sorry. Are we voting on the amendments, or we're just passing those on?
Those were friendly amendments.
Friendly, so, okay.
What Andrea's going to put in it, and then
Okay.
there'll be a final
Yes.
I just needed to
document.
clarify. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So all in favor of the voluntary agreement as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 500.
Okay.
Right?
And Abra gets notification of this, I believe.
Yes,
Yes.
You have to send the VA.
you have
Yes.
settlement agreement.
So
Settlement agreement. Okay.
They
so
changed that.
I'll make these amendments and I'll pass it by you. If everything is okay, we'll send it to Rachel and she'll send it over to Abra.
Sounds good.
Okay?
Can you also copy the commissioners, once you send it to who?
Rachel is
will
going to
do
send
that.
it.
Right,
Yes.
Rachel. you'll-
Okay, next on the agenda is a resolution regarding proposed Pepco merger.
Do we want to go on and do the 3118 Fessenden so they can go?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah,
I'm
that's a good
fine
idea.
with
Okay,
doing that.
because I'm afraid the Pepco was going to be a long discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna jump ahead to the motion to approve zoning exception for 3318 Fessenden Street as presented at the January 15th meeting of ANC 3F.
Great. And thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, for joining us tonight. You all have been regulars. I hope after this is all done, you'll still come to ANC meetings. So this is case number 18941, and Mr. and Mrs. Johnson live at 3318 Fessenden Street, which is the first house as you exit the Fessenden side of the Methodist home, the Forest Hills home. And they have lived here prior to the time that the tree and slope overlay came into effect. And so the side yard at their home is only 6 feet. Today, the tree and slope overlay is 8 feet. So in essence, by approving their request, we're basically grandfathering them in, I guess is kind of a simple way to put it. I want to commend the Johnsons because they have really gone above and beyond the call of duty and gotten 12 of their neighbors to sign a petition and to write letters on their behalves. And so they're obviously good neighbors, and we discussed this at our January meeting, and no one seemed to have any opposition. So without further ado, I would just like to move that we accept the renovation plan with the zoning amendment. I'm not sure that's the right terminology, but that is proposed in their BZA case. And I have the ANC report form that we need to submit on their behalf.
Second.
Any discussion, commissioners?
I think we were well served last meeting.
time.
We got everything
A
seemed.
lot of discussion, great.
Anyone from the community? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I live right directly across the street from the Johnsons, and I certainly have no objection to their plans to change, and I'm actually rather appalled that they've had to go through all this rigmarole in order to get approval for no change in the footprint of the house whatsoever. I'm really amazed. I dread having to do anything like that for my house, but there's absolutely no objection as far as I'm concerned, and I look at their house every day.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, move to voting. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0-0.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll go back to the resolution regarding the proposed Pepco merger. Andrea?
Yeah, so I circulated a copy of the resolution to the other commissioners. At last month's meeting, we had Rob Robinson from Grid 2.0 talk to us, and it was my understanding that Mark Battle from Pepco was here sometime during the fall of last year, speaking on this issue as well. I believe that it's a bad deal for the district. I believe that this merger is not in the public interest under any circumstances. And the resolution essentially calls for the Public Services Commission not to reject the resolution, not to reject the merger outright, but to call for certain conditions that further ensure that the merger is in the public interest. So I move that we approve the resolution to ask the PSC to put conditions on the Pepco Exelon merger.
Why don't you read what the conditions are?
So there's section C of the resolution that starts and says, for these reasons, ANC 3F resolves that in any settlement negotiations, the council and the government should require at least the following provisions. Number one, a binding Exelon commitment to implement programs that will reduce the average electricity bills of low-income customers by 50% or more through a combination of energy efficiency and locally based solar generation. Number two, a binding Exelon commitment to exceed the PSC's current reliability targets for reducing the number and duration of power outages. Number three, a binding Exelon commitment to work cooperatively with electricity customers in the district to implement the mayor's sustainability plan, including the goal of reaching 50% renewable energy by 2032, and documented reforms to Pepco's grid planning processes to ensure future investments and upgrades that help the district reach this goal. Finally, a binding agreement from Exelon as part of the merger to develop and implement, in conjunction with the PSC and the council, the structure for a utility of the future, including a new regulatory framework that integrates clean, locally produced, energy-efficient storage, state-of-the-art grid management techniques to create local jobs and produce reliable, clean, affordable energy. There's a final clause in here that says that ANC 3F urges all members of the council to publicly pledge that they will not accept campaign contributions or constituent service funds from Exelon as a demonstration that DC residents' interests are paramount.
So we'll go into discussion. Discussion from commissioners?
Yeah, I was under the impression that Mark was going to be joining us tonight to talk to us again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much. Should I step up here?
Hang on a second. Is there any questions?
I'm just clarifying that you were here. I'm ready to talk about this. I don't have any questions off the top of my head, but I'll put it up to you guys if you do, or we can.
Sally?
I would like to hear from Mark.
Okay, I have a question for Andrea. So Andrea, what you're asking us to do is not oppose the merger, it's to put conditions on the merger.
Correct. That's what I'm asking.
Okay.
There was a resolution that was passed in 3B. I forgot. 3B that called for an outright rejection of to recommend that the merger be refused. This resolution calls for provisions, conditions, essentially, that the merger only be approved under these conditions.
So it doesn't outright say we're rejecting this merger?
Nope, there is no vocabulary in here, okay? That it starts off by saying that we request that the council refuse to settle the case without assurances that the merger will enhance, et cetera, et cetera. So we say, please reject unless they agree to these conditions.
What?
Wait,
Well, a
is-
minute. How likely is it to get the binding, because at one point we talked about that may be just too much, the 50%? At our last meeting? You
50
yourself said that was,
50% is a lot to ask for.
right.
However, I guess my view is that there are so many things about this merger that are downsides for the community that we would like to ask for conditions that are really upsides, that are really things that, in other words, we're going to lose a lot relative to what we have now. So we need things to counterbalance those, and this is one. So I agree with this kind of requirement.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who's here in the audience that wants to speak on this? Just to try. Okay.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Again, my name is Mark Bell. I'm Vice President of PEPCO for the Washington, D.C. region. I'm also here as Donna Cooper, President of the PEPCO region. I do appreciate the opportunity to come back to you. As you noted, I visited this ANC several months ago. I think it was really when the merger was first announced, and so it was really prior to any of the issues that have come up from the various interveners. In just looking over what the different ANCs have done over the past few months, I came across actually your webcast of Rob Robinson, and so that's how we became aware that he did come to this meeting and speak about the merger. And there are a number of things that he addressed that we would find inaccurate, and things that are actually in the resolution, the whereas clauses, that we would be happy to address as well. But I want to make a couple of really preliminary points. Number one, the Public Service Commission is set to hold its evidentiary hearings on the merger starting March 30th. And there will be legal briefs filed after that, and the Commission will deliberate sometime over the summer. It's our view that it makes good sense for commissions to really wait on voting on any resolution for or against until after the actual evidence comes out in the evidentiary proceedings, because even just since last week, a lot of facts have changed. And when the evidentiary process goes forward before the commission, the lawyers from Grid 2.0, People's Counsel, all the interveners, PEPCO's lawyers, will cross-examine the various witnesses, they'll test the evidence. The commissioners themselves will cross-examine the different witnesses, go over the evidence. And it's our position that it makes sense for really any voting body to make a decision or voice their concerns in a resolution after the facts are fully kind of fleshed out. And the facts have not really been fully fleshed out. The second point I would make is that there have been a couple of really important developments over the last couple of weeks with respect to the offer or the proposal that's been made in the District of Columbia. The Community Investment Fund has been significantly increased. It's more than doubled. That was a commitment that we made in a proceeding last week. We are refiling that. Actually, it was going to be filed today, but the district government was closed. So there'll be a filing before the before the Public Service Commission tomorrow, which details the more robust customer investment fund. In addition, we made clear last week that Pepco and Exelon are indeed committed to meeting and exceeding the Commission's reliability standards. That was a point of contention. We've long said and long maintained that we will always meet the Commission's standards. There's an issue with respect to whether Exelon could meet the standards while staying within the existing budget. After looking at the reliability statistics at the end of 2014 and just doing a lot of number crunching with the engineers and the financial folks, they concluded that Exelon and Pepco could indeed meet or exceed the standards staying within the existing budget. So those are two major issues that have actually shown a major shift in the last week. I know that when Mr. Robinson came here, he spoke about a number of issues. They generally lumped into the areas of rates, reliability, and renewables. And without going through all of that, I'd be happy to take any questions about any concerns you have about rate impact. I just spoke about reliability. I can speak about renewables as well. But we think the most important thing to do is really wait until the Commission fleshes out all the evidence. You'll have it. You can come back and draft your own resolution that really encompasses what your thoughts are after seeing the evidence for yourselves. So we can take any questions, or I can run through a few things about the rates, reliability, and renewables I think are very important as well.
So how many hearings are there going to be? Is this the end of the process?
It is.
Or is just tell us what the process is on March the 30th.
So March 30th begins the actual evidentiary legal proceedings before the Public Service Commission, where Pepco's witnesses, Exelon's witnesses, witnesses from Grid 2.0, People's Council, and all the other interveners will be cross-examined. It's a full-blown trial. It's a complete trial. That is the last process. The Commission has held a number of public hearings since mid-December until the end of January, and that provided an opportunity for the public to come out and just voice their opinions. Also, the City Council held two roundtables. Mary Chey chaired one, and Councilmember Vincent Owens chaired another, and that was another opportunity for the public to come out and voice their opinions. But the Public Service Commission is the decision maker, and that is the only forum where all of the parties will be sworn in, where all the evidence will be fully kind of fleshed out, again, subject to rigorous cross-examination, and it's through that process that a final decision will be made. And so, again, our view is that once those hearings, and I think they're scheduled for about 8 days. It's usually like a Monday through the following week. Once all of that evidence comes out, it's our view that that's when it's most appropriate for folks to then come back and say, okay, we support this merger for these reasons, we oppose it for these reasons, because there are so many things that will be clarified at that point that are not clear at this point.
Haven't there already been sworn expert testimony on both sides of this before the PSC, that the PSC officers have asked questions in response and things like that?
What we do in these proceedings, all of the parties file, it's pre-filed testimony, and yes, there's discovery, and so the commission staff conducts discovery. We conduct discovery on other parties. Everyone conducts discovery on everyone else, but there have been no hearings where The witness is sworn in, and you cross-examine them on their statements. And if you find any inconsistencies, you go there, and the commissioners will examine them as well. That is where the actual...
Is there any new evidence or new testimony that's expected at these evidentiary hearings? Something new that hasn't been heard as part of the discovery?
Well, I gave you two examples. One thing that's new is our clarification of how we will, or the fact that we will in fact meet the commission's standards while staying within the existing budget. That's one thing. And then also a huge thing is the Community Investment Fund, which has been completely, revamped. And so
you said that's the $14 million?
Well, now it's
now
approximately 33 million. I'm sorry.
Around 33.75.
Right.
33 million, and that translates into what per household, more or less?
It would be approximately $142 per customer. And what that represents, in fact, is it mirrors similar arrangements that have been agreed to in our other jurisdictions. New Jersey, for example, just approved the merger in the last week, and it was on roughly equitable economic terms. And I hesitate because each jurisdiction is different, and so they'll have slightly different terms and conditions and different things that they might want to do with their customer investment fund. But the bottom line is that we're looking to have it equitable in each of our jurisdictions.
Baltimore got $200 per household, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was substantially more than what.
That was a completely different transaction.
It was 200 versus 50.
It was originally 50, and they're saying that they've agreed to raise it to 142.
Right.
$142.
Yeah.
What we want to make sure is that all of our jurisdictions are treated equitably, and so New Jersey has settled. Actually, Delaware just agreed to a settlement last week. The Public Service Commission in Delaware has to approve that settlement. It has been approved in New Jersey. But when you talk about what happened in Baltimore, it's an apples and oranges comparison because Pepco is a distribution-only company. It's a wires-only company. That other transaction dealt with generation as well as distribution. And so it was a bigger deal. There were bigger synergies to be realized, and so you can't really compare that sale, which involved generation, to this one, which is distribution only. So
That's a good
I'm sorry.
point.
I'm a little confused about the timing.
Yes, ma'am.
You said that the evidentiary hearings begin March 30th.
Yes.
But then when our next ANC meeting after that would be April 21st. So when would a decision be made by the PSC?
By April, the parties will just be filing briefs in the case. The commission gives itself, there's no hard and fast rule, but they have a standard of about 90 days to decide a case. So there'll be, you'll be well within a window to draft, pass, submit a resolution. I'm guessing now because I can't say when, how fast the commission will work, but it would likely be towards the end of the summer.
Okay. So how would we get the, sort of English version of the output of these evidentiary hearings? I mean, how are we going to know what the findings are in a sort of layman's terminology?
One thing you could do is look at the briefs filed by the parties, and each party will, of course, sum it up in the way that they see it. Mm-hmm. But for example, Grid 2.0 is a party in the matter, and they were here. They're going to sum up their opinion in their post-hearing brief and reply brief. Pepco and Exelon will do the same. The Office of People's Counsel will do the same. Sierra Club will do the same. DC government will also do the same. And so you'll get a very good, I think, synopsis of where all the parties stand from that. But that's much more valuable and kind of tested information than what you have now.
So I have a question for Andrea here. You have a clause in here saying that the PSC has rejected the DC government's proposed schedule that would permit a more thorough investigation of the merger and failed to make the facts of this merger available and accessible to ANCs. Does this new hearing address that in your mind?
The request was for a longer sort of discovery and brief process, so than what's there now. So I guess the view is a formal request was made to extend the timeline of this whole discovery process, and that was turned down. And there was also, I think, a request that part of that longer discovery process be funded by PEPCO or Exelon, and that was turned down.
Can I address
So, yeah.
those 2 points? And this kind of goes to a lot of the concerns that I expressed in the email that I sent out about this resolution, because there's a lot of factual inaccuracies that are not the fault of any particular commission, but should you...
What is factually inaccurate here? You've said a couple of times
Okay.
there's inaccuracies. What exactly in here is inaccurate?
So,
Copy?
yes, well, I'll take your last point. The issue about funding. Early on in this case, a few of the parties, Office of People's Counsel and others, sought to have this case classified as a rate case, okay?
Yes.
And PEPCO and Exelon believed that it was not a rate case and it should be classified as other. And under the Commission's rules and under District of Columbia law, there's only 2 types of formal cases that come before the Commission. It's either a rate case or it's not a rate case. And if it's not a rate case, it's considered an investigation. A rate case is a very, very unique kind of legal proceeding, and it always ends in the Commission setting in some way, reducing, or raising the rates of the company. That's what a rate case does. This merger proceeding does none of that. It's not a rate case at all. Rates are not going to change by virtue of any decision that the Commission makes with this merger. The People's Counsel wanted it to be considered a rate case because under district law, the utility can be assessed more money, i.e. we pay the legal fees and expert witness fees of the Office of People's Counsel at a higher rate if it's considered a rate case. And it's at a lower rate, it's a lower cap, I should say. It's a certain amount per year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a considerable amount of money either way, whether it's a rate case or an investigation. And our position was, you can't call it a rate case just because you want a higher cap on the fees. A rate case is a rate case, and an investigation is something else. And the Commission determined that, yes, you're right, it's not a rate case, will not be setting or in any way changing the distribution rates at the end of this case, and so it's an investigation. That was the funding piece. And so PEPCO still does pay for the legal fees of OPC and also the Public Service Commission for that matter. We are sent assessments every so often, and they detail what their expenses are, and we look them over and we send a check. And that has not changed. And so that's one inaccuracy.
So I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
You just made your argument for why it's your position that this should not be a rate case. You didn't make a position that what was in here was inaccurate.
What was inaccurate was that the statement that we are not funding, or there's no funding involved. We are in fact funding the litigation in the same way that we always do.
Can you look at A9, please? That's the article that addresses this. It's saying that it's not enough funding. And
Okay.
the fact that it was OPC proposed that it would be a rate case and that you said no is sort of what this is saying.
Let me just go through A, B, and C while I'm looking at it.
Okay.
The PSC rejected the DC government's proposed schedule. That is actually inaccurate. The the commission did in fact extend the procedural schedule. This was in the October-November timeframe. So it extended then, and there's also been an extension now because we were supposed to go to the evidentiary hearings on February 9th, and now we're not starting until March 30th. So, but A was addressed back in October and November. B, rejected the Office of People's Counsel for a ruling that would have required, that's inaccurate just in its, how it's set forth. The People's Counsel didn't request a ruling that would have required Exelon to provide funding. That never happened. There was no such request from OPC. The request was simply that the case be considered a rate case, and the commission decided that it wasn't a rate case. And in no event, because Exelon is not currently a public utility in the District of Columbia, Exelon would not be providing the funding. It would be PEPCO that's providing the funding, and PEPCO is in fact providing the funding. And so B is inaccurate as well. Part C, failed to make the facts of this merger available and accessible to ANCs. That's inaccurate just on its face because this has been a very transparent process from the very, very start. All of the filings from all the parties are posted on the Commission's website. And also the Commission has held numerous public hearings all over the city. I know that the Commission's website is not necessarily easy for everyone to navigate if you don't do it every day, but it's there. And if anyone ever had a question, they could call the PSC and say, where is this document? They could call OPC, they could call PEPCO, but all the documentation is there. And so C is inaccurate as well. And there's just a number of other things, earlier in this resolution that
Like what, please? Because to make a broad statement, there are inaccuracies and not to kind of tell us what it is. We can certainly correct something that's inaccurate here.
Okay. Let me go to number 7. A substantial portion of Exelon's business model is based on selling the energy from nuclear power generators to customers at the highest market prices, but the development of renewable energy sources threatens that business model because renewable generation lowers the competitive price of electric energy. That is not accurate. That's not an issue here in DC. And the reason it's not an issue is because with deregulation, customers have the option of selecting any energy supplier they want. They can stick with PEPCO's standard offer service. They can go to a third-party supplier and get 100% wind energy. They can get solar. You can put a rooftop solar array. It's not an issue. And since PEPCO is a distribution-only company, our revenue stream is only from the distribution of power, not from the sale of power. And so with this transaction, with Exelon proposing to acquire PEPCO, Exelon is acquiring the same financial interest, which is in the distribution of power. It's not in the sale of power because that's not what we do here in the district. Exelon already has a presence here in terms of supply through its own supplier, which is Constellation. Constellation is a company that anyone in here can choose to purchase from as a third-party supplier if you want. None of that changes. There's nothing about this merger that in any way changes how individuals choose to get their electricity. And so there's no conflict here.
Isn't there a fundamental conflict, though, between Exelon's business model and PEPCO's in terms of Exelon's big business of Exelon is selling their energy?
Right, but
big business of PEPCO is getting us the cheapest energy we can. It seems to be a disconnect.
Exelon sells its energy, but they can only sell it in the district if they bid into the auction that's run by the Public Service Commission, where only the lowest responsible bidder is going to win. If the fact that Exelon generates electricity all over the country, that does not mean that PEPCO is either obligated or will in fact purchase its electricity, because we purchase it again through a regulated process here in the district. So they're selling electricity, but we're not buying it in the same way. And so there's no...
You're talking about a split between Exelon the other business is, and Exelon what they're going to do here.
There's an absolute split, yes.
Okay. My understanding, though, is that according to the documents that have been filed, that split has a lifetime to it, and that beyond a certain number of years,
No.
there is license to
No,
not have things split as much as they
I
are.
think what you're referring to is ring fencing.
The ring
and those are two different things. A split is a permanent structural split from regulated entities. The distribution utilities are regulated by the Public Service Commission, meaning they set our rates, they set our liability standards. We cannot charge what we want. We cannot change our rates. The Commission changes our rates when it deems appropriate. That's regulated. The unregulated side of the business is the supply side, and Exelon has major holdings in that. But those are two completely different sides of the house, and they are structurally, financially, legally completely separate. What you're talking about, ring fencing, is something completely different. Ring fencing is a legal and financial structure that protects subsidiaries of corporations from either their sister companies and the liabilities of the parent company itself. And the proposal that's before the Public Service Commission, this is an important clarification, is that we initially proposed a 5-year ring fencing proposal, but only that the Commission take a look at it and make sure that it is appropriate after about 5 years, but the Commission can keep it in place, make changes, do what it wants. But the company is not suggesting that it should expire after 5 years. It's simply that it should be reevaluated to make sure that it's legally appropriate at that time. So there is no expiration proposed for the ring fencing.
So Exelon will have no say in what the new conditions of the ring fencing are when it expires? After 5 years, you're saying that Exelon will have no say in whether it's extended or what the conditions are under which it's extended?
I mean, the company will have a say to the extent that we always have a say in just arguing our point before the Commission, but the Commission will determine what those conditions are. And so, sure, the Commission might hold a proceeding and say we want to revisit these ring fencing proposals, we want to strengthen them, and we'll come in and we'll give our opinion, but the Commission will issue a decision, and that decision will be binding.
Okay, are there other, there must be others that have questions for you.
We want to go, and I know you do, I want to be clear, Mark, about the date.
Yes.
I'm still a little confused about them.
Okay.
First, in your letter to us, or your email to us, you said we had plenty of time, and I understood what you just said, but then you say you don't think the PSC record will remain open on this matter until the middle of May, but then just recently you said till the summer.
So
has the timeline moved from?
No.
Oh,
so
okay.
the middle of May is when we expect the reply briefs. So there'll be the hearings will take place, say 7 to 8 days of hearings.
Mm-hmm.
Then all the parties will draft briefs. And then all the parties will draft reply briefs.
Right.
Once the Commission gets the reply briefs, that's the point at which the official record closes, and they begin to deliberate. We expect reply briefs will be filed, what's that date? Is that mid-May?
May.
Right. And so
Oh, okay, so the mid-May is when the things will be filed.
will be filed.
Okay.
And so if you get a resolution in at that time, then it's on the record, and then the Commission deliberates from mid-May, and they have, again, 90 days. They'll take about up to 90 days to render their decision. But the important thing is that you have until at least when the reply briefs are filed.
So the record closes mid-May, right?
Yes.
Okay, so our ANC meeting in May is May 19th. That would probably be too late. But,
No, he's saying it wouldn't be too late.
well, mid-May, if it's say May 15th.
You're saying that we have time after mid-May to
No, the
do
record,
something?
No, so
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're still talking as though something new was going to happen there that hasn't happened already. The briefs have been filed. The only thing that's going to happen is that they're going to summarize sort of a post-evidentiary hearing part of the brief. These briefs have all been filed, as far as I understand.
The briefs will be filed by about May. The
Now, wait
hearings
a
will-
minute, you're saying the briefs have already been filed, and you're saying the briefs haven't
The
been
testimony's all been submitted, the briefs have been filed.
The-
Excuse me?
Do you have the dates?
No, I can.
Okay. The hearings will be over again, first week of,
This
The
last
first week of-
phase of the hearings will be over then.
the first week of, of April, right? And we, okay. We can get you the actual commission schedule, but it's basically 2 weeks after, the hearings are over, briefs will be due. And then you'll get usually have about 2 weeks to issue reply briefs. That's about the point at which the record will close and the commission will take the case and begin to deliberate until they render their decision.
In April.
What?
No.
No, they'll start deliberating in about mid to late April, and we expect, I can't predict it, but expect a decision maybe 90 days from that time.
You meant May.
I'm sorry, I meant May. I need to be looking at the calendar. Yes, thank you.
Oh, so I understand why you'd like us to wait until more evidence comes out or gets clarified. But today, the resolution we're looking at isn't saying yes or no one way or the other. So I was wondering if you could comment on the 4 provisions that were.
Well, I think it actually, to the extent that you're asking for certain conditions, I think you might find that after the hearings, those conditions might be moot. You might want some different conditions. You might want more stringent ones. You might just want something completely different. The issue I have is that these proposed conditions are based on a lot of things that are either unclear or, like I said, are inaccurate in the resolution itself. And I think it just makes more sense for you to look at what the evidence says, come to your own conclusions, and then if you choose to draft a resolution that fully incorporates your own views based on what you've heard. Again, it might be that based on testimony, there are certain things that are obviated, through the hearing process. So, for example, I think there was a Number 2, for example, a binding excellent commitment to exceed the PSC's current liability targets for reducing the number and duration of power outages. That's what we just confirmed a week ago, that we're going to do that, and we're going to do it within the existing budget.
Okay, excuse me, when you just told us what the new developments over the last weeks, the phrasing that you used was that PEPCO is committed to meet the reliability standards. What is being asked for in the resolution is a binding commitment. Those are two to say,
sure,
it's our intention to do it,
No,
and to have a binding commitment that you have to honor it or suffer some whatever,
It's
those are two
absolutely-
very different things.
I should have been more clear. It's absolutely a binding commitment because we expect that to be in any commission order. So anything that we're, like, the Customer Investment Fund, that's a binding commitment. Anything that we offer in this process and the commission puts in an order will be binding under penalty of law. So it is definitely a binding commitment. And
So
I should-
the 80-minute, what's the number that they're asking for? I forgot, in terms of average outage time.
Well, currently, we are exceeding the standards for both frequency and duration. I don't remember.
Who is, PEPCO?
Yes. When I say-
PSC set standards for, I think, 80 minutes or 90 minutes average duration time. And as according to the testimony, the earlier testimony by someone from Exelon, that number was going to be 107, standard outage time.
And
That was the best that could be done
that was
based on,
the commitment at that time was that was the best that could be done while staying within the existing
right. And so now,
budget.
are you committing to the 80 minutes?
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Okay.
within the existing.
So let me
Yes.
just clarify, these are the numbers, Mark.
Okay. and I'll just read it so I don't mess up anything here. We have updated our reliability performance commitments, setting new targets for reducing the frequency and duration of power outages in the district. We have committed that PEPCO's reliability performance will meet or exceed the District of Columbia Public Service Commission's current standards for outage frequency and duration for the 3-year period from 2018 to 2020. PEPCO's average outage frequency in its DC operational area will not exceed 0.66 interruptions, a 35.9% improvement over PEPCO's average performance over the years from 2011 to 2013. PEPCO's average outage duration in its DC operational area will not exceed 90 minutes, a 39.6% improvement over PEPCO's average performance over the years from 2011 to 2013. We will achieve these reliability targets without increasing PEPCO's forecasted reliability spending and have proposed Exelon be subject to enhanced financial penalties of up to $5.6 million annually if it falls short of these goals. So,
Okay.
and that enhanced penalty is in addition to a penalty to which we'd be subject if we don't meet the commission's standards. The commission can fine us for not meeting their standards. Again, we're meeting their we're exceeding their standards, but there's a potential for 2 separate penalties. But that shows, I think, how confident the companies are that they're going to get it done.
And so this is in the form of an amendment to the filing that
Yes.
this clause is added?
Yes, yes, there is.
Good.
We made a filing last week. The commission asked that we amend that filing and file it today, but government was closed today, so you'll see that filing tomorrow. And I can actually circulate that to you if that makes sense, because I know the commission's website is kind of difficult to navigate.
Okay. So I guess we don't have to call for that anymore if you guys have agreed to it.
Right. But that's just an example of why, something that has changed. Other things, throughout the hearing process and settlement talks may change, and it just makes sense in our view for ANCs to just wait until the record's kind of final, and then render your decision on what the final status is in terms of what we've committed to and what the other parties would like to see.
Okay, is there anything else in these 4 points that has already been changed based on the, because we can certainly keep the others.
Yeah, I can't speak to how these other points might make their way into a final order. I do know that, PEPCO currently works cooperatively with customers to reduce their energy usage through, implementing, solar or any energy efficiency measures. That's a commitment that Exelon has taken on as well, but I can't speak to, the goal of at least 50% renewable. That's something that I can't speak to this time.
Yeah, that's from the mayor's office, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's their goal.
Well, I'm sorry, when I said that I can't really speak to the 50% that's in section 1. We're in full support of the district sustainability plan and doing everything to help the district meet those goals.
Well, that's what she's asking.
Oh,
Andrew's
absolutely.
asking the last 4 on C, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what she's asking you.
I'm not in a position here to, negotiate on behalf of the company, so I can't say specifically what will happen with, say, issue number 1. I've spoken to number 2. Number 3, again, we are working with the district and will continue to. And number 4, I think that's really something that's more in the purview of the commission itself in terms of a regulatory framework. That's beyond really what the company can do, but that's something that I think will come up in the process of the merger talks. Of the actual evidentiary hearings and also in the settlement talks that are ongoing. but that's not something from a reality it's just not something that any one company can just commit to. We can't change the regulatory framework. We are a regulated utility. The regulations kind of come down on us.
Anything else for Mr. Battle?
Anyone from,
Oh, I'm sorry.
wait,
And does anybody?
were there
else
any
have-
other questions for Mr. Battle from the audience?
I'll probably have some questions once, if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to be brief.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I promise I will just speak for a few minutes. I'm Jacques Kapuscinski. I live on Nebraska Avenue. I'm a homeowner. And I have a rooftop solar. And the reason I do is, first of all, I want to step back and say I want to sort of talk about the big picture. I know there's a lot of details about the hearings, but I do think it's important for the public for this commission to vote on what they know now. Who knows what's going to happen in the future? And I think these forums are important because it helps educate people and hear different perspectives on this really huge decision that's going to impact the District of Columbia for the coming decades. So as I mentioned, I'm a homeowner on Nebraska Avenue. I've had rooftop solar through a co-op that I helped organize with Andrew and others since May. And I did it because climate change is a real threat. And since I've had my panels on my house, I have my carbon offset has been 4,000 pounds, equivalent to planting 40 trees in just 6 months. And the reason I'm telling you this,
Wait, say that again?
so in the last 6 months, since May, my carbon offset has been 4,000 pounds. This is according to the company that tells me how much energy I'm producing, and it's equivalent to planting 40 trees. So
Carbon off.
yeah, carbon offset, meaning I'm not producing carbon that's increasing climate change. Now that's fairly dramatic when you think about it in just a 6 to 8 month period. And the reason I'm telling you this is because solar rooftop is something that's in Ward 3. We have 56 homes that have it already. It's a trend all over the city. DC has the best credits in the country. It's got an amazing program. And Exelon, unfortunately, is on record for opposing rooftop solar. They may support centralized solar, but they're opposed to these type of programs. And this is based on research I've looked on. I've done some work, I've done some research, and their vice president for regulatory affairs has come out against renewables for wind and for solar. And the reason is quite simple why they are, because their major source of power is nuclear power. That is their main, source of energy that they sell. In DC, believe it or not, I know we don't love PEPCO, but I think, we know PEPCO, and PEPCO has done a fairly decent job of helping, to get this kind of program off the ground and supportive of it. And it's a concern when, Exelon has come out against this. It's also an issue. Exelon is really not that financially healthy of a company. It is reliable on nuclear power, which is expensive, which can't compete, as I mentioned before, against wind and solar, and it's looking for a healthy market like DC to potentially pass its costs on. The gentleman said before that, as you all know, PEPCO it buys and sells energy. It doesn't produce energy. Exelon would have to rely on its nuclear fleet because that's what it has as its main fleet to buy, to sell the generation to. I know you said there are different options like Constellation and ratepayers would have those options, but I think that there's a credibility issue if that's the case. If you are so dependent on one source of energy, you have to sell that somewhere. It just doesn't go away. Finally, one of the things that I've known this because I used to live in Oregon, is the whole issue of decommissioning a nuclear plant. There are costs, and the estimates are from $500 million to $1 billion to decommission a plant. Exelon does own 26 of these plants. It has said, that there is a ring fence provision, but that's only for 5 years, is my understanding. Nobody really knows what's going to happen 10 or 15 years down the road. Are we going to be liable for those costs, as ratepayers? I think those are the type of things that Exelon really hasn't said much about at all, and I think there needs to be some answers to those questions. I also want to point out that 12 ANCs have passed this resolution already. I mean, maybe not similar to this, but they have. So there is, and I've been to most of the hearings, and I've been to 2 of the public hearings, one I saw on TV, one I was there personally. So there is a lot of opposition to this, and it's not just the environmental community. There's businesses that are, church groups. So there's a fairly broad coalition of groups that have serious concerns about this. And I'm very sorry, but I do find it a little offensive when you say just rely on the public, the expert witnesses to make, to hear the case. I mean, it's sort of discounting what me and hundreds of, of other people have said about, the concerns they have. So, I may not read and live this stuff every minute, but I have done some research on this for a number of months, and I've listened to what other people have said with an open mind. So I think it's a little concerning to me if you're just saying, let's just go to a formal hearing and that will be the decision body, but still I think people, residents have a right to speak their opinions about what they would voice their opinions on this very important issue. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just take 2 minutes to respond to this point.
Just to your last point, and I apologize if I was in any way offensive. I'm not suggesting that the views of the residents don't matter. What I'm suggesting is that all the views should be taken into account, including the ones that we've heard in public hearings, but we should wait until we've heard also what comes out in the evidentiary hearings before making a decision. So, and that's what the commission is going to do. The commission is going to take into account everything that's heard. It just doesn't make sense to listen up till now and make a decision, and then there's a whole evidentiary process that'll happen. One other thing about passing costs on, again, the ring fencing is not going to expire. It's not set to expire. But more important than ring fencing not expiring is the fact that DC ratepayers cannot legally be held liable for anything that happens outside of the district. That's not necessarily a ring fencing issue. That's just how rate making is done. And so if there are decommissioning costs associated with a nuclear facility somewhere across the country, that cannot find its way into rates. And the reason we know that is because whenever we have a rate case, the commission and all of the parties in OPC, they go through our books with a fine-tooth comb, and they look at every expenditure and everything, and we have to justify it. And you cannot charge DC ratepayers for anything that happens outside of DC. So that's just not an issue. It might be an expense that Exelon has to bear in some way, but it's not going to fall on district ratepayers. And there was another point of...
well, I think you were nodding your head up.
Again, the commitment to renewables, there is no conflict of interest, no business, no economic conflict for Exelon. Again, Exelon generates electricity. It sells its electricity places all over the country, but this is a regulated market. This is a distribution-only company, and the revenue stream, the financial stream that Exelon would be acquiring here in the district is from a distribution company only. So, Exelon's power generation is not going to all of a sudden be flowed into DC for Pepco to purchase. That's just not the way power is purchased in DC. The way it's purchased is, again, through a wholesale auction, and that's simply not going to change. And so, Exelon might want to sell its nuclear energy elsewhere, and they can bid into the market here, and if they're the lowest bidder, fine. But if they're not, it's going to be whoever else wins that bid. There's no conflict there.
But your company, I'm sorry, does control the majority of the transmission lines in the Mid-Atlantic? I mean, not Pepco, Exelon does, excuse me.
So,
and if you can address that point, and this is the last question, is why is Exelon so opposed to rooftop solar? Why has your Vice President of Regulatory Affairs come out, saying that they want to cut subsidies to that?
Two different things. So Exelon is not opposed to rooftop solar because, again, especially in a market like the district, that has absolutely no bearing on Exelon's financial picture, Pepco's financial picture, because we do not profit from the sale of electricity. It's only through the distribution of electricity in the district. The concerns that Exelon has expressed with respect to different renewable programs is making sure that the costs of those are properly allocated, that the costs are not unfairly shifted onto other customers who might not have an interest in it. and also making sure that customers who are going with rooftop solar are also paying their fair share of what it costs to keep them connected to the grid, because you can have a solar array, but you still are connected to the grid because the sun's not shining at night and you're still using that system. That's been Exelon's position. Very quickly.
But you're not using the system when it's dark. I'm sorry. I mean, the system's down. You have to be careful here.
Yeah, it's my understanding that Exelon has spent quite a bit of money, lobby money, to get in the way of net metering, which is what enables the rooftop solar arrays to be connected to the system in Illinois and in some of the other places that Exelon, in Wisconsin and Massachusetts, and other places where Exelon is operating.
Again, I think you have to look at what's
So to say that they're not opposed to rooftop solar, I think is a little bit of an overstatement, no?
No, because I think you have to look at what is their interest right here in the District of Columbia. And so, just like Pepco has no interest in stopping you from having your rooftop solar array or you from having your rooftop solar array, because the supply of energy is not our economic source, it's through distribution. That would be the same thing for Exelon here in the district. There is no financial incentive to prevent anyone from having a rooftop solar array or going to a third-party supplier, because that's not the line of business here in the district. And so, the facts are different from locality to locality. I mean, they say all politics are local. That's very true, because we have what we call decoupling here, where we are in a position to encourage you to conserve electricity because that's not where our revenue stream is. Well, that's what Exelon would be picking up here in the district, and so their financial interest would be the same as what Pepco's financial interest is here. You can't just compare it to Chicago, because that's a completely different regulatory and just
I'm having a difficult time, I must confess, with this separation business. Right now, we buy, about 20% of our power. Pepco buys about 20% from Calvert Cliffs. That's my understanding, that's about the number from the nuclear sourced from Calvert Cliffs. That's my understanding. Does that sound like a good number to you?
I'd have to look at the field, but
Okay,
I'm
but
not sure.
in that area. And so somehow the idea that if tomorrow all of the District of Columbia goes rooftop solar and we're not buying any power anymore from Exelon's own power plant, that Exelon's not going to care?
Everyone could go tomorrow to a third-party supplier and pick whomever they want. That's the option people have right now.
But Pepco right now is buying, I think, at that rate from Exelon's Calvert Cliffs plant.
I can't speak to where specifically it comes from. I know there's a fuel mix, and nuclear is a part of that. I'm not sure where that's sourced from, but the important thing is that customers have full choice right now, and customers will continue to have that choice. That's not going to change. And that's because that's not the financial incentive that's not the revenue stream for Pepco, and it's not the revenue stream that Exelon would acquire in acquiring Pepco.
I think the question is, certainly if everybody in the district went to rooftop solar tomorrow, the company that produces nuclear energy and sells it into the district would certainly care. The question is, would their ownership of the distribution lines through Pepco give them the ability to force the consumers in the district to continue to buy their power? And I don't think they could. Right?
That's right. That's right. Again, if you go,
they certainly would care that people weren't buying their energy anymore, but could they do anything about it? Would the fact of their owning Pepco give them the ability to do anything
The
about
fact
it?
that the same company is now going to own Constellation, which is one of the options, and Pepco, which is some of the other options, certainly gives them more leverage in terms of asking for whatever they need or whatever is in their interest from the PSC and getting it.
but those are competitive suppliers, and again, customers can choose. If you don't like Constellation, you can switch and go to another one. There are 150 competitive suppliers in the district that residents and businesses can choose from if you don't want the standard offer service, or you can have your rooftop array. or. So there's a complete array of choices, and none of those choices change. Exelon is, or Constellation.
What's the percent? You quote that number 150 as though all of these people all over the district are buying energy from, what's the numbers though in terms of what percent buy from Constellation and Pepco?
Oh, I can't speak to what percent buy from Constellation. I know
Roughly.
on the residential side, it's still about approximately 85% are our standard offer service for residential, and about 15% choose to go to third-party suppliers. And on the commercial side, there's a higher percentage, and I don't want to quote those numbers, but commercial customers use third-party suppliers at a higher rate than do residential customers. But the choice is open to all customers at all times. And that's not going to change.
Because of the PSC.
Well, right, because when the market was deregulated several years ago, they opened it up to third-party suppliers, and there's a very rigorous set of rules, in fact, that prohibits Pepco from, encouraging, anyone from not going to a third-party supplier or picking one third-party supplier over another. It's a very robust set of rules enforced by the Commission to promote choice here in the district.
And because Pepco's not an energy creator, it has no incentive to change those rules, right? Or push for a change.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Once we divested, we said, okay, we're the distribution company, and you purchase your power from whomever you want, and we'll distribute it, and that's our financial model.
But in a couple of years,
That's the heart of my argument. If Exelon, this merger happens, I don't think Pepco would be, Exelon would not be an objective party here. They would have a vested interest to purchase the power from the sources that are producing it, which the companies, the assets they own.
or push to change the rules.
Right. And there's a lot of history of, if you do the research about how the company operates, so it's not,
This is a public policy issue that the council decided and the Commission enforced. The city wants to go to, competitive energy market. That is what it is. Surely, if it went to something different, Exxon might have a different interest. But as the status now, Exelon is but one of many suppliers that can bid into the wholesale market, and if they have the winning bid, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they have their competitive arm, Constellation, which can get out there and compete on a one-on-one basis as well.
No, and I understand where you're coming from, but I also understand where the gentleman's coming from in terms of pushing for rule changes, why that might not be an interest of Pepco right now, but if the structure changes, it would, from the energy providers or to re-evaluating the ring fencing in 5 years, how a new corporate entity would have a different sort of outlook at that. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind.
Sure. But one thing I'll still say, even if there were no ring fencing, and there will be ring fencing, DC customers still could not be held responsible for costs that are incurred outside of the district. It's kind of a double protection, but the ring fencing will be there, and also there will be no costs from outside of the district that find their way into rates.
Could you explain that protection a little bit more for me? How the protection from a nuclear decommissioning in another state?
So,
Or the one here, because we also have, it's not in the district, but we get energy from Calvert Cliffs.
A cost like that being passed along to it. What exactly is protecting?
So, from the outset, I'll just note that there are no costs associated with the merger at all that are going to find their way into rates. That's another commitment that we've made. There are expenses, of course, that are being incurred, lawyers and all that. None of that will be recovered in rates, and that will be enforced by the Commission. But the important thing is that when the Commission sets rates, it can only charge the District of Columbia residents for things that actually serve District of Columbia residents. It can't be that Exelon has some expense somewhere else that it wants to shove off on someone, or they want those expenses shared. It has to be something that is, so I'll give you an example. There's an executive, our CEO, who oversees, Pepco, Delmarva, and Atlantic City Electric. Pepco DC can be held responsible for a portion of his salary, right? It's allocated based on the number of customers and some other kind of, equations. However, the vice president of Pepco for, the Maryland region, no part of his salary will find its way into District of Columbia rates. And I'm vice president for DC. No part of my salary can find its way into Maryland customers because I don't serve Maryland customers. Okay, so whether it's personnel or equipment, it has to serve the district in order for the district customers to be charged for. So that's why, because
I understand that dynamic. What I don't understand, and this is on me, it's above my head. How is that codified? What says that nothing can be passed upon?
It's the commission's regulations. Okay. It's the regulatory law that governs how rate cases are done, and it's the scrutiny with which the commission and other parties go through all of our expenses, and to make sure that everything for which we want to receive recovery in the district is actually serving district customers. And so,
Commission's rules. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I just have to note, I'm sorry, that this is an article in Chicago Times in December 10th, 2014, where Exelon went to the Illinois legislature asking for a subsidy for $580 million because their operating costs for their plants were so expensive. I don't know what the outcome of that was, but it's true the public commission makes a decision, but there could be enough pressure where we could be told that you have to raise rates. If not, we can't operate these plants. So that's what they said, 3 months ago in Illinois.
So that's an example. It's a very good example of how a difference in venue makes a difference. Because in Chicago, there's a generation facility in that state serving those customers, and so that is a cost. It's a local cost that for which Exelon is trying to receive recovery from its local customers. We don't have any generation in the district, and so that's why that example kind of fails here, because there is no equivalent source. There's no nuclear plant, there's no generation source in the district with costs that could be passed on to customers. And that's why it's so different. That's why it's so important to make a distinction between looking at something that happens in Chicago or New York or even Maryland. Every jurisdiction is different. It's a very, very fact-specific inquiry.
I think that's disputable just because the history of the company and the fact that this merger were to happen, the whole company would still be they would have to figure out a way to offset their power somewhere, and this is a new market. I can't see them not trying to push, as this gentleman was saying, to pressure the PSC to change rules or the past. Anyway.
Okay. Are there any final questions, comments? Anything else from Mr. Battle? Anything else from you? You want to add?
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
So did you?
So, we vote on there's a motion on the table. We move to vote.
Am I allowed to ask that somebody propose a friendly amendment to the wording of the resolution? Or
You can amend it yourself.
okay, so I would propose to remove that item C.2 that Mr. Battle told us is already in the amended filing, and I would propose to amend the wording in A.9 to make it clear that what was rejected was the proposition by the People's Council to make it a rate case. And I would propose to make those two friendly amendments.
Okay.
And correct
Any other-
what Mr. Battle called the inaccuracies.
Comments or questions before we vote?
I just wondered, are you, I know you've said that you feel like all the relevant information is known and we're not going to learn anything through the hearing process. But are you at all open to tabling this until our April meeting, in with the possibility that PEPCO might, sort of come further along, or there might be additional facts that we take into consideration in our resolution?
Okay. A couple of things. One is, I'm not suggesting that we know that everything that possibly can be known is already known. But at this point, what we're asking for is a set of conditions. If it turns out that during the further negotiation process, one of these conditions are met, then there's nothing in our resolution that goes against or that makes that impossible. Mm-hmm. What we're saying is, please turn this down unless these conditions are met. If the answer before the commission by the time the end of the process is there is all of these conditions are met, then we're good. So I would propose that we continue with the vote this evening.
Are we sure that there's no conditions in a month that we might want to add on? I mean, something new is filed tomorrow.
Can another, so you're asking, can another resolution, can we?
Yeah, I mean, if you, yeah.
Can we get rid of this resolution and add a different resolution?
No, we could do a new resolution. We could pass this tonight, and then if new information comes to light that we want to address.
And we could do another one.
We could do another resolution.
Because I do
important.
like the reworked one where we're putting these conditions on now instead of saying yes or no. I think having a hand in guiding that process is more important.
I think I agree with you now, but I still semi-agree with Mr. Battle that there could be other things that come up.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be other things that come up that we cannot speak to tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So
it may change our opinion on some of these. May.
Well, there's a motion on the table, and unless somebody wants to make a motion to table it, I think we should go ahead and vote on it, unless Andrea wants to pull it.
No,
and she has said she doesn't want to, so I think we should either
to
vote on this, or somebody should make a motion to table this resolution. Do you want to do that? And then we would vote on the motion to table.
Right, and then if that declines, then we have
vote
to.
on the motion.
Sure.
I mean, just to be frank, I'm concerned that either way, huge chunks of our meeting are being devoted to discussing this merger.
Yep.
And, I mean, if we table it, I think it's going to open the door for more discussion. If we vote tonight, I don't know, that doesn't seem to be a done deal because more facts may come out. We may want to impose further conditions. So
Yes.
I don't know.
Rock and hard place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so let's vote on the motion that's on the table, unless if nobody else wants to offer a motion to table. Then let's vote. The motion as amended by Andrea with those 2 points. All in favor? Passes 5-0-0. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, sir, for your time as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much and for coming.
My name is Tom Whitley, and I'm interested in finding out who my commissioner is.
Where do you live, sir?
I'm on Connecticut Avenue West.
Right here.
Oh,
wait, Connecticut Avenue. Keep
okay.
going.
See, there's no way for me to know.
4600, right?
Huh?
You're in 4600,
4600.
Connecticut Avenue.
Is that where you live?
You do.
No, you do.
Do you live in 4600 Connecticut Avenue?
No, I'm not in 3F04. I'm across the street.
No. Do you live at 4600 Connecticut Avenue?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
me.
Oh, okay, good.
That's me.
Well, my name is Tom Whitley, and if you ever could drop by and leave a note in your box about how I could get a hold of you at some time.
Okay.
Just to find out what's going on.
Okay.
I was a member for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and they switched the lines, so it's a big mystery.
Okay.
We're still having our meeting, Tom.
What?
We're still having our meeting. We're not done
We're
yet.
still on the agenda, Tom.
Oh, I saw you vote.
Yeah, Yeah, we still
Very
have a
sorry.
couple more items.
I beg your pardon.
That's okay.
It was getting late, the sun was
Be
coming
careful.
up.
Be careful. Don't trip on
If you're going to
this.
stay,
Very
I can
sorry.
speak to you after we adjourn.
Okay, so let's move to miscellaneous items. First is approval of the minutes from the January 15th meeting. Andrea circulated the
Yeah,
revised minutes.
I didn't print them out either.
That's okay.
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes
Thank you for doing
5-0. Okay, update on the technology committee. So I'll do this quickly. I circulated to everyone the work plan and notional budget, and then a website user survey that Pat and I came up with. Now, our goal is to try to work through this process and launch a new website by our May meeting. And to get that, to get to that point, there are three main steps. The first is gathering information about what we and the community want and need from the website, and that's the website user survey. The second then is to commission design, the website design, and there are some questions that we have about that. And then the third is to take that design, whatever design we pick, and have that actually developed, have the programmers actually code that into a functional website. So we've allocated essentially a month for each of those steps. The website user survey, the questions that we sent around, we would put that online for about 2 weeks to get input from the community, and then also to do things like you were suggesting, for us to look at other good examples and come up with ideas for ourselves. Oh, this is something I'd like to see on the website.
Right.
Then we take all, the second 2 weeks of that month, we take all of that input and we put together design specifications based on everything the community has said, based on everything we have said that we want, and come up with a list of specifications that we would then show to everybody and then give those to the designers. The designers would take those specs and based on those specs come up with designs for the website. And then
That's in this March area?
that's in the March area. That's
Okay.
3 weeks for them to do the design. Then there are a couple ways to do it. One way is to hire this company that then sends it out to numerous designers. We would get back as many as 25 different design proposals that we could then sort through, pick the 2 or 3 that we think are best, and then bring that to the commission and choose our favorite. Now, there's also an issue here that we will have to think through a little bit, in that we already do have a relationship with a designer, and so we need to incorporate that somehow into this process as well. But I've talked to Adam about this, I need to look at what our actual arrangement is with that person and find out.
It'd be nice to know.
Yeah. So I'm sorting through some of that, but that's one of the issues at the design phase. And then once we've evaluated the various designs, chosen one that we like, then we go out to a development company. Now you see here estimated costs. The survey is cheap. Website design could be as much as $2,500. Development, Pat, you thought maybe $3,000.
I think that's a good ballpark figure.
To do that. So all told, $5,500 to design and launch, and then you've got hosting costs, which are negligible.
I mean, is somebody going to maintain this after we, other than us, other than Adam, or one of the commissioners?
That's something to discuss as well. Once we have a sense of the design, and one of the specifications could be, it has to be designed and coded in such a way that a non-expert can update it, so that we could have our assistant, that could just become one of the job requirements of our assistant, that you have to be able to update the website.
And that would be also part of the design process, to make sure that maintaining and updating the website is straightforward and easy to do. Make sure that it's built on a platform that enables current assistant or future
Well, that's
assistants
something we need to decide.
Yeah, I think we should
Because-
incorporate training for Rachel
Mhm.
as part of this. Maybe that's an additional budget item. I don't
Sure.
know what that costs, but, I'm sure Rachel would be open to that kind of training.
And that can be part, like an RFP process for the development, if we want to, give a couple different companies an opportunity to put a proposal together and make sure that that's part of the
Well, I
building process.
think I'd like to see that, where it's,
Have we cut ties with the other company? Does anybody know the status of that?
We have not. Technically, they are waiting for our comments on their design so that they can then incorporate our comments, make whatever revisions, and then give us a final product. So I've asked Adam to give me the agreement that we have with them so I can see what do we do if we decide not to give comments. And so I'm working through, I'll work through that question, but that's something that needs to be part of this whole process as well. What is our obligation, financial and allocation?
Do we have any stats on the current website at all in terms of hits and how frequently people come and that kind of business? Is that being collected at all, or that all of this information is going to come from that
today,
survey?
so I think it's probably 3.
Really? Okay, you did more than me.
Okay, but the idea is that almost all of this information is going to come from this survey rather than from anything that's being done now?
I
Okay.
don't, I mean, I'm not sure if there's analytics set up right now for the current site. And
Okay.
so,
It would be good to have it as part of the new one.
yeah, well, installing that should, definitely be part of a new build if it's not part of the existing
Right,
one.
and that's something that I'm really curious about, and that's question 2. What were you looking for? For the people who do go to the website, what were they looking for? We may find that the only time anybody ever goes to our website is to find out what the agenda of the meeting is, or they're looking for a copy of a document. It'd be good to know, what are the things
Or they're
people are
looking for the
actually
map,
looking for.
because they
They're
don't
looking
know
for the
whose
map.
district
Right.
they're in.
Right. So hopefully we'll gather that kind of information. What are the most important things people are actually looking for, and then that will gain some prominence on the website. And if nobody's ever looking for the financial documents, then that can be kind of buried somewhere else.
What's the promulgation of the user survey? Like, how are you going to solicit?
Go ahead. So we've discussed a few things. First of all, featuring it on our own website and making sure that that built-in audience, however big in numbers, has that prominently displayed to them. Distributing it to the neighborhood listservs just via emails and encouraging people who are our constituents, who are regular online users and who would be interested in that sort of information. And then sources, other community sources of information like Forest Hills Connection.
It should be on there, definitely.
Yeah, I've traded some emails with Marlene already, and she's expressed openness to featuring at least a story about our survey and directing some traffic there.
Good.
Well, she's even talked about SurveyMonkey at times.
That's probably who we would
Well,
use.
SurveyMonkey is very, I think it's free, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is a free option
It's
for it,
30.
but with some of the skip logic and depending on how many questionnaires we expect, getting their lowest tier of a paid option probably makes the most sense for us.
Right, 'cause we need to be able to get 1,000
Oh.
responses,
Yeah, right. Dream on.
Hey, we each have 2,000 constituents. Come on.
So that's the plan.
Well, that's
we
great. That's
hope
great.
to sort of drive this forward quickly. The next step then would be, I'm going to make a motion to approve this initial $30 to get the survey up and running. So we'll get that up, assuming that passes by the end of this week. Then that will be up for 2 weeks. In the meantime, we would ask the commissioners to do a little thinking, look at other ANC websites, look at other government websites for ideas, things that you think would be useful, and just send those to us, and we'll sort of incorporate all of that. And then by our next meeting, we will present our analysis of the responses and sort of the initial design specifications based on everything that we've learned from the commissioners and from the public.
Can I suggest that one of you write to Gottlieb Simon and ask him for 2 or 3 ANCs with great websites? When we were going to, set up committees, Venice Vision Committee and so forth, I called him and he gave me a couple of really good recommendations, and I wound up talking to people who had set up committees. So I would just suggest that y'all,
That's a great idea.
see, and then find out who they're using, for their, whatever you
the
call it,
design.
designer, whatever.
Well, that's why I sent those today to all of you. Because some of those, those were only Ward 3, because they're our neighbors. But obviously, there might be some other places that have good websites that
Yeah,
we
there's
should
one
be
up on
looking
the hill
at.
that has a good
I
site.
assume maybe you all are looking at some of those and
Taking
have
a
some ideas, because there are a multitude of them out there. And there are certain web designers that seem to have, well, I mean, they have their own kind of look.
That's why
I think that was interesting. I saw a lot that didn't have, you asked about the logo. I was going to ask you about the logo. I think it came from you. And you said you'd like to see the logo change, and that's always been I think, an issue in the past. I'm not positive, but I think so.
Changing it has been.
Changing the logo.
Has been.
And I noticed that a lot of websites a lot of ANCs don't have a logo. They just use the DC logo.
Well, I mean, Pat
So-
was saying that this is something that we should think of before we go into the design phase, because the designers will want to know,
Right.
am I to incorporate this logo that you already have, or am I
Right.
to come up with something new
Correct.
to build in? And so,
Yeah.
if people feel strongly that the logo that we have on the website now is our known and accepted brand, then we should stick with it, and then we should just be clear about that. If people are not wedded to that, then
Well, I make that point because the merch logo was done during, many years ago, 17 years ago, and it's stuck. So, I mean, I think it's recognizable, and we need to be clear.
Is that your design, Sally?
No, it was a graphic. We hired. It was a parent. It was a graphic designer. But I mean, it was a collaboration again that came up with what this school stood for. So,
I would love to entertain the possibility of having a little miniature of our map be the logo.
we would get a graphic designer to work on that map.
Kill two birds with one
Sorry.
stone.
What I do, but I know people who do that. They pay people to do this, so that's your friend is an amazing graphic designer.
Well, we haven't paid. We'd love names.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Okay, so
Always looking for sources.
always looking for sources.
Yeah.
Anything else, Pat, that you want to add?
No, that's basically it. I think we've got a good action plan, and just a lot of these questions will be answered. Whether we need, the website server will help us answer them, and we'll have a good idea in about a month of what makes the most sense to move into for the second phase of our plan.
Okay, so with that then, I would like to make a motion to authorize the technology committee to spend up to $30 posting the
Second.
survey.
Second. You got a second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Okay, so now discussion of purchase of an ad in the Boy Scouts Troop Guide for $150.
That is mine. Full disclosure, our 16-year-old son, Alex Ray, is a Boy Scout in Troop 100. So if you all feel that it's appropriate for me to recuse myself on the vote, I'm happy to do so. Troop 100 is one of the oldest Boy Scout troops in America. It's the oldest in the area. They're coming up on 100 years. And every year they do a magazine called Council Fire. And they cover the different events and service projects and so forth that the Scouts have participated in during the year. And it's a great advertising opportunity. For $150, I believe we get a full page. I think the back page is $250, and I think my husband is buying that one. So anyway, I just think it's a great opportunity for us to get a little free $150 PR in the community. These are families that are very engaged in the community. Most of the families live in either our ANC or neighboring ANCs, and so I would just urge us to approve $150 for this ad.
Does that ad purchase include like the design putting it together? Will they do that for us, or?
That's a good question. I mean, let's just say 150, and we'll see what they come up with. What we could do is just take the existing graphic that we have. I don't want to get into a design fee thing right
Sure.
now, especially since we're doing that with the website.
Mhm.
I mean, I think we can just do something really basic like our existing logo and say
Congratulations.
ANC 3F salutes Boy Scout Troop 100 for making the community a better place. Whatever. You know.
Could you
I
do
don't
that,
care
Rachel?
how we write it. But
Could you do that? Could Rachel do that?
that'd be great, yeah.
Yeah, 'cause
And so I don't know if I
usually you
should
have to
not
have a
move this
ad.
and vote because my son's in the troop. I mean, I don't know if anybody else would be willing to make the motion.
I'll move to purchase an ad in the Boy Scouts Troop Guide for $150.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 4-0-0.
Great.
4-0-1.
Okay, I guess should I abstain?
Yes.
Just as, okay, all right.
4-0-1.
Thank you.
Okay. Discussion of purchase of a brick in the Owl Walk at Hearst School for $150. Whose motion was this?
I think that's Adams,
Oh.
actually.
Well, that's in his territory.
But I'll be happy to make the motion. I move that we purchase a brick in the Owl Walk at Hearst School for $150.
Does anybody know any background on it?
Part of
Just
their
that it's a
renovation.
fundraiser.
I guess it's their renovation, right?
Yeah.
Is it the home and school? It might be the home and school that's doing it.
I don't know. I don't
That
know anything
would be
about
my
it.
guess, but I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And what's gonna go on this brick? I mean, would we come
sure
up, do we put a ANC
I'm only voting
3F
for it.
dedicates this?
Binding.
Okay.
There's probably a limited number
I
of
was gonna say,
spaces.
it's like the
and,
Farnsworth
I don't think we can
Playground
get
has
too creative.
the bricks, and it's just got sentence. I assume.
Well, I can't answer any of those
Okay,
questions.
all right,
So
I can't either.
Is there a second to the
maybe
motion?
we should wait.
You want to wait?
I mean, maybe
We
a
have
little
more
background information?
Okay. Well, you had it on the table, so if nobody seconds it, then.
Okay. What, can we table it till?
Moving it back.
Table
Adams
for
here?
Adam's return.
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's
Okay.
all I would do. Okay.
Okay, and then I have one more. At our last meeting, we discussed buying an ad, renewing our ad in the Forest Hills Connection for $960, and there was talk at that time about upgrading to a larger ad, which would have been $1,200. And in my new role as treasurer, not having a handle on the finances, I didn't want to vote on increasing anything. Now I do have a handle on the finances, so I would like to make a motion to spend an extra $240 on our ad and upgrade our ad in the Forest Hills Connection to the larger ad.
I'll second that.
Wait. Oh, okay, you can second. Can we have discussion on that?
Okay, so, did it, I
We have
mean,
to
interrupt
discuss
your
it, right?
second. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, one of the things that we talked about last week was the format, the banner ad versus the side ad business. And that the higher price one is this side ad business.
Right.
And I think there were a bunch of us here that thought that the banner was like a better format. So I don't object to the extra price. That's why I think I asked, or somebody asked, is there such a thing as a bigger banner ad?
Yeah.
Because the idea that the banner ad was kind of a nice thing, but we don't mind the extra support for them. And is there a middle ground?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just know these two options.
Right. Oh, Adam. Okay.
He's going to talk about the owls then. Hey, he can do this from Tokyo.
Okay.
Okay, and I agree with you, Andrea. That was my main concern. Actually, I think the banner should be more expensive than the side. I, for one, think visually, I see the banner before I see the big,
And
on the
is this,
website.
it's a fundraiser?
So
And if
can
you
we-
look at it,
Can we give them $1,200 for the banner
No,
ad?
I think we
No, they're-
determined that, yeah.
I can find out.
I think there was some mention of that not being appropriate to pay more than the market value rate
Okay.
based on it. I mean, maybe there's another way, if there's a mini grant we could give in honor of how valuable it is to our community, but, or encourage the Forest Hills Commission to, or Connection to revise their rates in advance of the next meeting. I don't know.
So we're trying to come up with a way to give them more money, is that it? Because we like the banner.
Okay, can I just say about the banner ad? I think it's confusing for us to have that banner ad because it looks like it's competing with the Forest Hills Connection. Plus, we've had it for a while, and I think if we switch things up and go sideways for a while, it'll, like, people will be like, oh, something changed. So, so I would support trying the side thing. I just think it's good to switch things up.
I think refreshing it could get new eyeballs. That makes sense.
And we need to go back to the brick. That was Adam.
Can we
This
finish
is the
this? We'll
deadline.
come back to the brick.
Okay, I'm good with that then.
I don't really care. I mean, if we're going to have a new logo, then
Okay,
do it all at one time. Right? Sure. I mean, who designs the ad in the Forest Hills Connection?
I don't know if that was included as part of it or if that was
I can't answer that.
I cannot either.
Can you answer
So
that?
there's nothing,
Who designs the ad in the Forest Hills Connection email?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm coming, I just need to.
I think that's a question we need to ask Marlene, or Tracy, but I don't think that should make any difference of us voting for it or not.
No, I think we should go on.
But I think we need to know, I mean, since we're going to the website.
the $1,200 ad is the largest ad that they have available.
Correct.
So there isn't anything other than that. Is that the just ad that they have available?
Correct.
So there isn't anything other than that. Is that the, 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 is that the.
My memory of it
I
is
can't
just not
remember it
exact.
either.
We can go back and look at the record.
Okay.
That didn't come up. Okay, so the question is, do we,
In any case, whatever it's, I mean, it's not going to increase our cost substantially over, because I think as part of the banner ad discussion last week, we talked about changing the design of that for this upcoming year. So it'll be a new ad, whether it's at the top of the page or the side of the page. So the line item really changing is here. It's just the increase
right,
in the different
I agree
placement.
with you that it gets stale with the at the top.
And I think that's, yeah, we're
It's
all.
fine.
I'm just gonna
Okay,
do
So-
let's move on.
Motion to increase by $240 our ad purchase of Forest Hills Connection. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0-0. Okay,
Go back to the brick.
go back to the brick.
Okay, that was Adam calling from, I don't know, Tokyo or somewhere. And the deadline is tomorrow for the Hearst brick. So, rather than tabling the motion, I would like to blow some air back into it and revive it and move that we purchase a brick for the Owl Walk at Hearst School for $150.
Second.
We get 20 characters per line, up to 3 lines. So I think we can just say ANC 3F and really keep it simple.
That's fine.
Great.
Did he say who it was through?
And it's for their fundraising will be on the walk leading up to the school,
Right,
and it's a fundraising
from
campaign for
agency.
the foundation.
Okay. That's what they use we do. Sure.
All right,
Is there a second?
There's a second. I heard a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passes 5-0-0.
Thank you.
And I know we didn't add it to the agenda, but we got something today about the Tiger, a grant for the Tinley Tiger Run from Wilson High School.
Did they respond to you?
Right. Was it you, Margaret, that said, is it even in 3F?
Yeah.
It's not.
Did they
It's
answer
not in
that?
3F, by the way. It's next to your.
Right, it bumps up against
It bumps
mine.
up against yours.
Which is why they contacted me
Right,
last
because you said that you agreed that they should do it. That's fine.
But I think we may want to check our grant requirements and bylaws.
I don't
If
think-
it's not in our ANC, I don't know that we can give them a grant.
I
Right.
don't think so.
We can't.
I wonder
Yeah, I
if
don't
you
think
can.
this is something that we should take up tonight.
Okay.
I'll look into it
Okay.
more. But
I hate
Okay,
not to
just-
support it, but I don't think we
Yeah.
can.
I don't think so.
So I just think we have to look at our
Right.
grant requirements.
No, on the assumption that some people in 3F go to Wilson,
Right.
that could be the hook, but.
I think we just have to look at the language and
Right,
see
and
if
it
we
was
can.
just- it was dropped on us
cobble
too
them
late
in.
to be able to think
Yeah.
about it, think
Yeah.
it through carefully.
Yeah.
But I will respond to the one.
Good.
Okay, so the last item is the financial update. I gave everybody a copy of our budget performance for FY15. The balance at the bottom, the bank balance, is our current bank balance, $129,704.56. And then what you can see here is the left column is the budget that we passed at the end of fiscal 14. Actual is the spending that we've done since then up to today. And then the difference is just the difference between our actual and our budget. So you'll see in some categories we're significantly under our budget, and some, particularly purchase of service, we're well over. That 7,500 was to Travis, or to Travis.
Oh, yeah.
Where is that one? Oh, I see. Over here,
14.
purchase of
Yeah.
service.
And you'll see where we're significantly under is grants. We budgeted 20,000, and we had spent exactly zero.
But it was something about that, with the grant, maybe.
The thing to notice about this is that our district, if you go up to receipts, our district allotment for this year is $15,585, and we've budgeted $60,815 worth of expenses. So what we're doing is, if we stick to this budget, we're drawing down our balance by $45,179.
Why was there a district allotment half of what we had budgeted? Is that
Actual, no, they've actually, they give it to us every quarter, so we've got.
we've received half
We've
of it so
received
far.
2
Okay,
quarters
I
worth of
understand.
our allotment.
I have a question. When the budget gets passed, is it totally fluid in terms of being able to take this money and spend it for the other and that kind of business? Basically, whatever we vote on is okay.
Right,
Okay.
we can only spend in these categories, so everything that we spend, every check we write has to fit into one of these categories, and the auditor
Good.
checks that carefully.
Good.
But-
Okay.
I'm saying this without knowing it for sure, but I don't think we're bound by where we put the money in our budget.
Okay. Good.
So
Okay,
what-
any questions?
What do we purchase for $500 under office equipment? Okay, so you did that versus the contribution, okay.
Bob did.
Bob did?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the actual is starting as of January?
No, as of October 1st.
Oh, October 1st. Well, wait a minute, I thought we paid that last year. We paid
Not
five.
last fiscal year. Actually, I haven't even given them the check yet.
I was just going to say,
We just
I
signed
signed
the
that
check
check today.
We passed that in December.
Right.
But Bob didn't do the check, and I didn't have authority to write those checks until last week.
But this is the check to them from a year ago?
For the TV?
No. This is for the TV, this is now for this TV.
Right.
You have, okay, which is today.
Which
Okay,
is
that's
as
what I
of
was
today.
asking.
Right,
It's
as
not
of-
the one we did a year ago for
No.
them. Okay.
No. Everything on here is from October 1st until today.
Okay, so October 1st.
And we spent $3,623 in January and February, mostly in February. In case anyone's interested.
Yeah,
Okay?
that doesn't show in there. Okay.
No, it doesn't show on there, but
Because you could have another column for how much we spend a month. Be interesting.
any other business? Motion to adjourn, all in
So
favor?
moved.
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you,
Call
Malachi.
it
Thank
10:02.
you.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
job.
Good job.
The patient died at 10:02.
I didn't mean to be rude before, but you all look like you're very grateful.
No, that's
to be
fine. I know
raising
what
your
you're
hand.
We were all ready to go.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm
That's
very good at paper.
Considered saying anything
I don't
DUD
I
saying about
don't even think about